or it may just have been invented by Nietzsche and a few other philosophers since Nietzsche. But it is possible. And the more people who are excited about it and believe in it and put their energy in it, the more likely it is to happen. I think at this point I will have a question period. I wish some of the fundamentalists showed up tonight. They could announce that this is Satan that you hear speaking to you. This is obviously an anti-Christian message. It doesn't say anything about hell, sin, damnation, doom, or anything like that. So I must be serving the dark one. But they're not here. Is there anybody else who has any interesting objections to raise to this kind of fantasy? Yes?
It seems to me that some of the apparent increase in lifespan is an illusion caused by the reduction in child mortality. What is the actual change in lifespan of people who reach the age of 10 from then on? Because, you know, there was a time when something like 6 out of 10 kids died before they reached the age of 5. Mm-hmm. It's no longer around.
Yeah, but that is part of the explanation of the average life expectancy increasing, but it's not the whole explanation, because if you read books about, say, the 18th century, you'll see that not only were a lot of kids dying very young, but people were dying in their 20s all the time, because smallpox came around every couple of years, and that killed off about half the population. Then they'd start to recover, and back would come the smallpox again, or another type of plague, with cholera or one thing or another. And in the 19th century, you find the same thing. You find people are getting knocked off in their 30s by the pollution in the rivers of England is poisoning whole towns, and so on. So it's not just infant mortality. There was high mortality between 0 and 10, and between 10 and 20, and between 20 and 30, and between 30 and 40, and hardly anybody survived beyond 40. Some did, but there are always a lucky few with superior genes or extra good luck or something. So you do find cases of 70, 80, 90-year-old people in earlier epochs, but you don't find them at the same rate. Even in recent years, we find the number of people over 100 in England in 1976 was 300. In 1986, it's 3,000. And you wouldn't find earlier in history people like George Burns doing comedy acts at the age of 80, and so on. So it's more than just the decline in infant mortality. There's been a decline in death at all ages. Next question.
Do you see any significant impact on the pendulum swing of conservatism and liberalism? Maybe conservative right now and started to come and gone one way or another. How does that affect your vision in the future?
Well, I think these pendulum swings are kind of local and short-lived. If you look at the pattern that I've been talking about, the doubling of knowledge, if you look at history from 1750 to the present, you got these pendulum swings of liberalism and conservatism, but the overall pattern has been one of increasing lifespan, increasing literacy throughout the Western world, and then throughout the Third World too in the last couple of decades, in increasing optimism through most parts of the population. Surveys show that Americans have very little faith in their government these days, and people who only ask that question in polls say, well, everybody is cynical and disillusioned. But then if you ask people what they think about their own lives, it turns out in polls over and over that people are more optimistic than they've ever been at any period of taking polls in the past. More people are more confident about their own ability to solve their own problems and make a good life for themselves. So I think that if you look from 1750 to the present, all these local conservative backswings are only a minor part of the melody. The general tendency is like Beethoven's Ninth. It's moving higher and higher and louder and faster and faster. And each conservative backswing is less conservative than the previous conservative backswing. Ronald Reagan is not nearly as conservative as the conservatives we had in the 1930s. He has never attempted to abolish Social Security. He has never attempted to return to pure isolationism. Just read the polemics written by Republican conservatives in the 1930s and compare them with Ronald Reagan's type of conservatism. Nobody really wants to go back to the conservatism of the past. It really is dead. Next question.
Do you think this giant nation spirit that keeps people on the quest for power is what has brought so much of the destructive tendencies into humanity and so much of the violence into the world? Do you believe that there is that destructive tendency in human nature, or that it's just a matter of choice?
We're bringing in the Dionysian idea from Nietzsche. The way Nietzsche uses Dionysian, it means ecstatic, as distinguished from Apollonian, which is rational. And if you read Nietzsche carefully, what he's basically trying to describe in those poetic metaphors are what we nowadays think of as linear left brain thinking, which is the Apollonian, and right brain holistic thinking, which is the Dionysian. And I think if you look at history as a whole, you find that both of them are subject to perversion, especially when they become ruling class ideologies. So you find some really nasty Apollonian type civilizations and some really nasty Dionysian type civilizations, and you find some very good civilizations of both of those types too. So I don't think you can draw a line and say the Dionysian is good and the Apollonian is bad, or the Apollonian is good and the Dionysian is bad. These seem to be part of a dialectic, both of which are necessary for our evolution as I see it. Is that quite what you were asking? Oh, good. Next question.
You mentioned the information age, and I'm curious, what's like after the information age like, and maybe you can talk about the genetic and quantum explosions. Research results.
Well, yeah, what comes after the information age? That's the kind of question that has perplexed me a lot in the last 10 years. When I start projecting forward the scientific breakthroughs that I feel fairly confident about, when I reach about the year 2004, my mind goes blank. I can't imagine what happens beyond a certain point. Things are moving so fast that it gets harder and harder. You reach a point where it seems that all the utopian fantasies of the past are going to come true. That is assuming we don't screw things up and really wreck the planet first. And what happens after that? This is the kind of question I keep wondering about. Obviously, one of the things that's going to happen is that we're going to have genetic engineering, whether conservatives object to it or not. It's an interesting field for research. The possibilities are enormous. I think one thing that might happen is if it turns out that we cannot extend human lifespan beyond a certain point, let's say we can double it to 140, triple it to raise it to 400, but it can't go beyond that. And everybody finds out definitely there's no gimmicks, there's no ways of getting around it. 400 years is human lifespan, that's all we can have. Then the next thing will be, well, let's genetically engineer a new type of human being who can live longer than that. And that will be our gift to our posterity, to give them an indefinitely long lifespan if ours has to remain limited. And that's the kind of genetic engineering experiments I'm sure are going to be done. And in quantum physics,